Yeah.
You moved up a
Yeah,
block.
it's so different here. The weather is just crazy.
Yes.
Is that making
All right.
All right, everybody on?
Yeah.
Good.
So how'd you get involved with this project?
I was sent the script, and I read it, and really loved it, and emailed my manager, and I was like, hey, I really want to do this. Are they auditioning? He said, yes, I'm going to talk to David. So he emailed David, and I think David originally said that he wanted to find someone that was a non-actor, which is kind of his style. It's what he likes doing. And I told him, I was like, oh, please let me audition, please let me audition. And so I auditioned in Austin, and then I got a call back to reboot Nicolas Cage.
It's kind of a natural progression from Mud to this film, though, isn't it? I mean, in a way, I mean, they're sort of,
Yeah, of course.
they're sort of kind of set in similar types of, the circumstances are similar to a certain extent.
I think so too. Yeah, and then also Jeff and David went to the same college together. I don't know if you guys know that. Jeff Nichols and David Gordon Green.
Yeah, he did Mud and Tye Sheridan.
Yeah, and I think David was in the editing room a little bit when Jeff was working on Mud, so he was familiar with my work.
How different was it working with McConaughey and Nicolas Cage?
Yeah, they're two very different human beings, but they're both very, very eccentric. They're very distinct people. And just by the voice, like you can hear. I mean, sometimes I'm walking through my living room, and I don't know if you guys have heard, but McConaughey does a Reliant, the voice for the Reliant commercials, and like I'm walking through, and I'm like, wait, what is that? Voice? And it's his voice on the commercials, and then Nick, as soon as you meet him, it's like, oh yeah, that's Nicolas Cage.
What did you learn from each of them?
You can learn so many things, just from an actor of that stature. I know working with Nick, I was a fan of his work in Leaving Las Vegas, and where he played an alcoholic, and I don't know if you guys have seen the film.
Mm-hmm.
So we were doing a scene where we're both playing drunk, and he would get out of the truck and spin around in circles, and I'm like, I'm going to try that. So I would do that too.
What about working with the fellow who played your father, Gary Poulter? You were the veteran in that case, and he was the newbie, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. He was looking to me for advice, which is not very common. But it's great. Like I love working with non-actors because it keeps you on your toes, because you don't ever know what they're going to say or what they're going to do. And in this case, he would just get on a roll, and things would start coming out of his mouth, and you just kind of have to roll with it.
Had some pretty dramatic scenes with him too, didn't you?
Yeah, we on the first day, and this is, I think, is his signature move of David Gordon Green, but on the first day we did one really big scene, and I think he was a little nervous at first, but once we got into it and started doing it, it was like he was an absolute pro.
He just seemed to jump off the screen, and I went afterwards and tried to find out who was that actor, and his name wasn't anywhere, and I didn't, until I saw the press notes, I didn't know that he was really...
Yeah, well, they found him on the streets in Austin. He was a street performer, and they found him at a bus stop, and Gary had, he was in the Navy, I think, and so he was stationed over in Japan for a while, and he spoke a little Japanese, which I thought was very interesting. He's a very talented guy, really smart, and it's just unfortunate in a large portion of his life. But yes, they found him on the street, and they called him in to read for a small role, and he did absolutely great, and so they called him in to read for a bigger role, and then the next time they called him in, they wanted him to read the third lead of the movie, which he also nailed. It was, you know, it was such an honor working with him and getting to go to work with him every day, and to see the smile of you know, the smile on his face after we did a scene when he would meet Nicolas Cage and he would, you know, be in rehearsal with him was really touching.
I read that you had some rehearsal, but you really didn't get into character until you were dressed and on the set.
Yeah,
Can you
of
talk
course.
about that?
I feel like that with all my characters. It's like I have and I think this is pretty much every actor. Like you have a good understanding of what you want to do in the film, you know, with your character, but you can't really grasp it until you're on set and actually in the motions.
Do you ever worry that you're not going to get into character?
Oh,
Is that
absolutely.
your-
Yeah, I remember I was shooting. I was right before I did Mud. I just got the call, and they were offering me the role, and I was like, cool. So I'll do this with Matthew McConaughey and Reese Witherspoon. And then it set in. I was like, oh man. What if what if I don't do good? What if I don't do my job? So that, you know, it's always a worry in the back of my mind, which I think, I mean, who wouldn't worry in that case? But yeah, it's always there in the back of my mind. But you know, I usually just, you know, push it to the side and move through it.
What was it about this, when you did read the script, what was it about this character in particular that really drew you?
It was, well, the story itself was very appealing to me because it was set in the South, and I just fell in love with the characters. But my character specifically I felt was very. There was a couple similarities between myself and me, but there was also like a lot of differences. Like his dad was abusive and alcoholic, and that's totally different from the way I grew up. Like I've always had that strong father figure in my life, and that was one of the things that I found interesting.
There's some physical demands in this role. And have you ever had trouble? And I think we talked about this with Mud, that physical demands don't bother you much.
No, it's I always like the physicality in a film and some of the roughness and the grittiness, and especially this film. But you know, where it really gets interesting is like working with motors and animals, because you know they're unpredictable. You don't know what they're going to do.
Was there something that happened that surprised you?
I wouldn't say on this, but in the past I was, you know, in Mud I was working with snakes and motorcycles and boats. So the boat was really tough, actually. You know, I'd grown up in the South in Texas, and in the rural part of Texas, and I would go to the river a lot with my dad, and he would let me steer the boat. So I had a good feel for it, but the motor itself would die, and it was just a pain in the butt.
Can you talk about the different approaches of the directors you've worked with? I mean, you've worked with some pretty impressive directors now, David, and Terrence Malick too, and Jeff. What makes each of them different from the others, or is there anything that makes them different from the others?
There's absolutely a difference. My first 3 films I got to work with, you know, 3 of the top 10 directors that are directing right now. And I just assumed that every director was that talented. But I found out that's not the case. Because I did a couple films after this one. And it was a little bit harder for me to communicate with some of the directors, and the final cut wasn't as good and as polished as this one was. But I would say that Terrence Malick and David kind of have a similar style, but they're also very, very different, because I feel like they're both very deep, but David is more, you know, outspoken and open to anybody's ideas, where Terrence Malick also likes to improvise, and he like some of the like natural energy from his characters and some performances, but it's more in his head, and he's a lot quieter. So and then Jeff Nichols is like works on a script for like 10 years, and then is like super bases everything off of his script.
Did you contribute anything that wasn't in the script?
What's that?
Did you contribute anything that wasn't in the script?
There were a couple ideas that we threw around with each other and that fell into the movie. One of those being the cool face, the anatomy of a cool face. That was actually an idea from Nicolas Cage. He'd come up with the idea several years back when he was watching a car commercial, and this guy was like, "Come on down to the dealership and get you a new car." And he had this face, and he was like, "Well, is that the anatomy of a cool face?" And so he incorporated it into the script that he wrote that never got produced, and he always kind of hung on to the idea and wanted to incorporate it into something else that in his future, and I guess in this case this is where it ended up.
How did you feel about your performance, having watched it on screen?
I feel good. I feel good about the movie as a whole. I think it's a really solid film, as far as performance, music, sound, the quality of the film, cinematography. I was very pleased.
Is there anything you would do different?
I think every individual performance is special, and there's, sometimes I feel like you can't judge a performance because it's a piece of art, and, someone may like it better than others, and I think, everything's different, but there's nothing I would change.
Is there a scene, without giving too much away, that you're particularly proud of or felt like you really nailed it?
Not to be conceited, I don't feel like that, like I nailed it. But, I'm very proud of this film, and I'm proud of the performance that I have in it. But a lot of that is goes to my director, Dave. Like I couldn't have done anything without him. Obviously, he deserves all the recognition because he's the one who put me in this film. He's the one who directed me and steered me in the right direction. So.
Who's on your wish list to work with?
I kind of want to work with everyone. And also I want to work with James Franco. who I feel like is everything. He's like a writer, director, actor, and he's doing so many projects a year. Like if you look at the guy's IMDb credits, he's got like, it would take you 2 days to read the entire thing.
Well, he's a friend of David Gordon Green's, isn't he? He could introduce you.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I'll tell you the story of how I met James Franco. So with this film, when we were at the Venice Film Festival in Italy, we had just screened, and we got a really good reaction, and this was our premiere. So like everyone was a little nervous and a little unsure of how they were going to take the film and how the critics were going to take it. But everyone seemed to really like it, and so we were all feeling very proud of ourselves. And we got back late and we went to sleep, and I had to wake up at like 4:30 a.m. And I don't know if you've ever been to Venice, but you have to take a boat everywhere you go. To the airport, like I was staying in a hotel, you had to take a boat to the airport and then get in a car and go to the airport. So when I came down in the lobby, James Franco also had a film there, and they had screened that night. And he had stayed out partying really late. And so he comes into the lobby with like 10 women. And and these girls are all knockouts. So I'm kind of looking around, but not trying to be too nosy. So I'm up at the counter checking out, and it's like 4:30 a.m. It's still dark. It's a really weird energy. There's like nobody in there. And I see this guy like lean up next to the counter, and I look over, and he looks over at me, and it's James Franco. And we had just talked on the phone a couple days before in negotiations for this role, for this movie he's doing, called The Sound and the Fury, which I wasn't going to do due to scheduling. And and he was like, "Oh, hey man," and I was like, "Hey man." So I just thought that was really interesting.
What kind of relationship did you have with Nicolas Cage when you weren't shooting?
I think we have a really good relationship. We have a good friendship, and when we were at South by, he snuck me into a Snoop Dogg concert. So that's pretty cool. So I would say it's good.
Very cool.
Now, is there any thought of you directing yourself?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a late interest of mine. That and my goal is like, no matter what it is, no matter if it's like a 30-second film or, a 5-minute short, I want to direct something by at least 19. Hopefully 18 is the goal. But I don't know if that's going to happen because I'm turning 18 in November. Things aren't looking too good.
Do you have your own idea for what you want to do? I mean, a specific thought?
No, it's like, I have ideas and, I start writing, and I have a lot of ideas, but I never like, sometimes like, it's just, it starts with a scene and sometimes I just don't feel like I figured out the story enough to finish it, but there's I think there's a couple things in the work. Nothing too serious, a couple shorts. So, see what happens.
You've done all these dramatic roles. Would you ever want to do a comedy?
Yeah, sure. I'm doing this movie this summer called Scout vs. Zombies.
Okay.
Which is going to be like an action comedy thriller.
I'm already sold.
Yeah.
It sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, I could just sell you off the title. I don't even have to tell you who's in it. But, yeah, so I'm really excited about that. We're shooting in May in L.A., and, yeah, it's going to be my first taste of a studio film.
Nice.
I just recently did a guest appearance on a sitcom called Last Man Standing.
Nice.
You guys watch that? It's Tim Allen's show. So I did a guest appearance on that, and they do a live taping with an audience, and so it was a little weird for an audience to be laughing at me because I'm so used to people being so quiet and letting me focus on set. Everyone was making fun of me. They were saying like, "Oh, you're so method," which I wouldn't call myself a method actor. But I remember shooting. There was this one scene where I say a line, it's a really stupid line, and it got a big laugh, and it was like totally unexpected, and I just cracked, and I started busting out laughing, and the audience just loved it. And I was trying to stop laughing, and they just kept laughing, and I kept laughing, and we had to start over. So it was really different.
Are you interested in doing improv?
Yeah, well, we did a lot of improv for this, and on my first film, all the dialogue that I have is basically improvised. So yeah, I enjoy it because I feel like that's the way I learned, and I like acting, on my feet. So yeah, I enjoy improv, and I think it's a really fresh way to get some of the stuff you couldn't, if you were writing dialogue.
You're sort of at a tween spot in your life. You get offered teenage roles. Are you getting offered now adult roles as well?
I'm not getting offered adult roles. It's more of like, 18, 19 max. And again, like I've always promised myself that I was going to play at least like 2 years within the range of my actual age. Because one of my biggest pet peeves is seeing a 25-year-old play a 16-year-old.
You're not going to be that guy.
I hope not. And if you guys ever see me in one of those movies, and come find me. Slap me around.
Now, since you did the Tim Allen show, is there a bigger taste for you to do more live stuff?
I don't know. I've always been terrified of doing live stuff. Because if you mess up, that's it. Like theater is something that's always scared me. But maybe I'll give myself a challenge, and we'll see what happens.
We have time for one more question before we do wrap.
What do you watch?
What do I watch? Sports. Sports Center. Well, you know, it's like I travel a lot and I work a lot, so I feel like I'm putting in like a lot of focus into my work all day, and like my mind's just constantly spinning, and I need something to kind of zone me out, and just kind of calm me down. And so to wind down, I just catch the top 10 at night and watch a little Sports Center.
There you go.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
You guys.
Can we get a quick picture? Sure.